Welcome to Swartz Shorts, the podcast all about the entrepreneurial ecosystem at Carnegie Mellon University and the larger Pittsburgh community.
Welcome back, everyone, to this week's episode of Swartz Shorts. Today, we're excited to be chatting with Daniela Osio. Daniela is a graduate of Duquesne University here in Pittsburgh, receiving her degree in supply chain management, and is currently the founder and CEO of Kloopify, an end-to-end sustainable procurement solution that enables and measures sustainable supply chain management. Daniela, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. Hello.
Hello. Welcome.
Thanks.
So Daniela, we're really excited to talk about Kloopify. We're going to get into naming and everything eventually. Supply chain, Kloopify, we've got to get to the bottom of it.
Yes.
But before we go there, we're excited. We're eager to have you, young entrepreneur here in Pittsburgh. Could you tell us a little bit about your background and just what brought you, to this moment now?
Yeah. So I was born in Pittsburgh. I'm first generation American. So my mom came here from Spain, my dad from Venezuela. I'm a boomeranger. So I've left Pittsburgh and have come back. Speak a couple languages, and have traveled the world. Previously, I worked at DuPont, various roles: production, manufacturing, risk management, procurement. And so one of my big things was when I went to start a job or go into the workforce that I wanted to learn as much as possible. Because if you wanted to be an entrepreneur, which is something I've always dreamed of doing, you have to solve a real problem. And to solve a real problem, you have to go out into the industry and learn about what's actually being done and what are the problems out there. And so when I joined DuPont, that was my goal. I went and did a whole bunch of different jobs, talked and networked my little butt off. And then afterwards, once I got that, and once the pandemic happened, I took inventory of my life and said, am I doing what I want to be doing? And the answer was no. And why not? Fear, is that good enough reason? Absolutely not. So I took that leap, made that change, and started Kloopify. And it's been an exciting and very rewarding journey.
So you talked a little bit about living kind of around the world, speaking a lot of different languages. Your heritage comes from vastly different areas of the world. Does that have a little bit to do with the interest in supply chain and, how things move, logistics in general?
Yeah, I think what attracted me to supply chain the most was the fact that you get to talk and interact with so many different departments. You're talking to marketing, production, sales, everyone, finance, and you are the middleman, and you're kind of controlling, and you get this big picture, but then you can also see how all the little pieces and intricacies move. And to me, I thought that was really fascinating because you got to kind of get your hands in everything. And I'm someone who can easily get bored if I'm not learning and kind of being stimulated a lot. So I loved supply chain. And I also minored in information systems because I knew that data and managing data was key in making sure that everything worked well. So those two together was, a dream come true.
Amazing. And before we jump into Kloopify a little bit, I got to ask, so you lived all over the world. I mean, Venezuela, Spain, or where your parents are from, Germany, incredible places. Why'd you come back to Pittsburgh?
Well, Pittsburgh's always been home base. Yeah. Pittsburgh has a special, it's special. Pittsburgh is like no other place. And I feel like if I want to be where home is, it's always going to be Pittsburgh. It's where I was born. It's where I've decided to set my roots. I really just enjoy the city. I feel like it has a lot to offer. And the future of Pittsburgh is very bright. And I want to be part of shaping that future and bringing great talent to the city and just getting the name of Pittsburgh out there. I don't want it to be another Silicon Valley. I don't want it to be another New York. I want Pittsburgh to stand alone and represent just this incredible city.
Amazing.
That's great. And I think all of us at the podcast agree, and that's why we're so excited to bring you on and talk to entrepreneurs like you. So I have to start with the hardest hitting question.
Yeah.
The name Kloopify. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so Kloopify. We are living in a very linear economy. We take, make, and dump the majority of our resources. If we actually want to live in harmony with the world, we need to move to a more circular economy. So we take, make, and reintroduce, recycle, do all the R's. So there's a whole bunch of R's. And so Kloopify is the action of closing the loop. We're here to Kloopify things and close loop. And so our logo is just that, right? It is part of closing the loop and becoming and living in harmony with the world. And so that way we can have many more generations to come that can, enjoy the beauty that is Mother Nature and the world.
Love it. And so green tech and clean tech is such a hot industry right now for very meaningful reason. So it's a challenge that some would argue is our generation's challenge to solve.
Absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about that ecosystem, and tell me about, one, how Kloopify benefits from some of that momentum, but two, how we can continue to build that ecosystem here in Pittsburgh, in addition to the robotics and the healthcare and the innovations that we see in other sectors.
Yeah, I think clean tech is getting the much deserved attention that it needs, just because it speaks to the magnitude of the crisis that we're dealing with, right? And with that magnitude of the crisis, you're seeing that companies are starting to make very public announcements towards sustainability. 85% of publicly traded companies have publicly announced very aggressive goals. And I want to say for the last 5 to 7 years, it's been more or less lip service. But there's been a big change, and the new wave that's coming is that regulations are starting to come down. Investors are starting to ask about it at every single boardroom call, everything. They're asking not just, what are your goals, but hey, show me the data. Like, show me the proof and give me something that I can say that we're actually moving in that direction. And customers are starting to demand it, right? Our generation, the generation after us, they're requiring it, and they are going to spend their money with the companies that align with their values. So it's the perfect time to really, as a city and as an area, to focus on sustainability and to become the leaders in the United States of saying we're going to bring the best technology around clean tech. And for Kloopify, it's about giving these enterprise-sized companies the data that they need in order to make the best decisions. Because a fun fact is about 70 to 90% of your carbon footprint comes from your suppliers, so who you buy from. So if you want to actually achieve your sustainability goals, if you want to achieve your carbon neutrality goals, you have to work with your suppliers. And so that means you need to understand what is your supplier's footprint? What are their manufacturing processes? Are they using any chemicals of concern? There's so much data and information that you need to gather from your supply base. And so that's what Kloopify is going to do. And that's what we do. We centralize that. We make it super simple for buyers, the ones who are actually signing and negotiating these contracts, to have access to this data. And that way they can make better decisions. Because in the past, we've only cared about price and quality. But in the future, we need to care about price, quality, and environmental impact.
Yeah, I love the depth of Kloopify, because I think all of us, as we're educating ourselves on the changes that we need to make to improve our environment, there are a lot of superficial ideas out there, and a lot of us have an image in our head of recycling or of driving an electric car. But it's really these deeper solutions that are going to drive us to net neutrality.
Absolutely. And the key is to get access to the information, right? That's the baseline. And then with that, you can start creating smart projects. You can start setting, targets and start measuring your success with data that's supporting all of that. Because it's not just going to be, oh, guys, look, I recycled my cans at my facility and XYZ. It's no, this was our footprint last year. This is our footprint this year. These are the suppliers that are strategic to this. And this is who we're going to, move forward and work more closely with, because they align with our mission, with our vision, with our goals, right? Especially in procurement, when you're making contracts that are like 3 to 5 years long and $1 million contracts. If you're going to award that to somebody, make sure that you're doing it with somebody that's going to be a long-term partner and that, has the same values and goals, and you guys can work together to achieving those goals. And so without the data, it's just not possible. Not possible.
Yeah. So on that theme of partnership, a core component of starting an early stage company is funding that early stage company.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your approach to funding and how you're thinking about growing and scaling Kloopify from a funding perspective.
Yeah, so far we've bootstrapped it all, right? It's, personal investments and getting it up off the ground. And that's how I would like to keep it as long as possible. I'd rather go out and find non-dilutive grant and other types of funding, especially for the clean tech space, rather than going into the venture capital world. Maybe one day that will change. But for right now, I'm seeing it's already a big enough challenge to start a company and to kind of get it up and running. And we've been able to use creativity and other ways to kind of get us to that next step. And going into the venture capital world it's another monster in itself, right? It's another beast that you would have to deal with. And part of you starts a company not to, report up to somebody else. And when you take someone else's money, now you're, have to justify all your reasons. You have to, they have a say in what's going on in your company. And is that really why you started it? At the beginning, I think it's actually key to start and at the beginning to do bootstrapping, because it makes you become super creative and it makes you prioritize where you're going to spend, because it's not like you have a whole bunch, right? So you spend on high priority items, and you get creative with solutions. And there's so many other organizations out there that can help you without actually, let's say giving you money. There's even here we joined Ascender, so they're a local incubator. And they've been fabulous in making introductions and getting you in front of people and coming up with a plan. They've got advisors. I mean, all of that is so helpful, especially at the beginning, and as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that's a great point on non-dilutive funding, that there are so many resources out there that can help you to start your business without taking an equity stake.
Yeah, and maybe one day, if we want to accelerate the growth, that's part of it. But also the market that we're addressing, we're becoming creative and saying maybe there's ways that we can grow organically with these clients that are enterprise-sized clients, and see how we can make that work without having to dilute.
Yeah. So you spoke of Pittsburgh being a unique place and being one of the best places on earth to start a company. Part of that is because of the community. Absolutely. Where folks are willing to help each other to grow and scale their businesses. So tell us, how can our listeners help you and help Kloopify to grow your business?
Yeah, so we are growing. So we'll be posting job postings. So take a look at those. Also, if you work in procurement, or if your dad, your mom, your cousin, whoever works in procurement, tell them to reach out to us. We're creating a list of early innovators. And so those are the first people that are going to have access to the Kloopify platform and are going to be the ones that everyone else is going to be like, oh my gosh, I should have joined. I should have been an early innovator, right? And they get bragging rights for being in the forefront of what will be the future, tech startup of Pittsburgh.
It's amazing. So one more ask of you. One thing we want to institute on the podcast is to try and give something, a little tidbit, a little short something to our listeners. So is there a podcast, a social media channel, an influencer, a book that you're reading right now that you would recommend to the folks listening to the podcast?
Yeah, this is a book that I just recently finished, but it's called Anti-Fragile by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. And I would say everyone should read this book because it will change your mindset, because it talks about how we as humans we need to benefit from chaos. So instead of being resilient or, let's say, firm and strong, we need to get that chaos, learn from it, grow from it, and then become a better version of ourselves, tomorrow. So think of it like working out, right? When you work out, you're like making micro tears in your muscles, which you would think is like, oh, that's not a great thing. I'm tearing these muscles. But what you're getting is you're getting more strength and you're becoming a stronger person. And that's the same way with your mentality and how, I'm thinking about starting a company. These like chaos and all of that's coming, instead of trying to be resilient to it, it's trying to learn from the chaos and benefit from it so that we can be better tomorrow.
It's amazing. We appreciate the recommendation.
Absolutely.
Well, we've been, really fortunate to have you on the podcast today. I think it was great about what you were saying with Ascender. Ascender is a friend of the podcast, and I think that's just an example of the exciting entrepreneurial community here in Pittsburgh working together to find success, and that's something hopefully we can shed light on throughout this podcast. And we're just really fortunate to have you on here, and thanks for joining us, Daniela.
Thanks, guys. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Daniela.
it.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.